Hello, and welcome to Alcohol Free Radio. I'm your host, Chris Becker, and I'm excited to have you join us. Whether you are new to the amazing and growing alcohol-free community or someone who is already familiar, we hope you enjoy our program. This is where you can hear from some people making a real difference, whether as brewers or producers of amazing beverages, influencers in the community, authors, storytellers, and more. We aim to break it down and bring it all together. Our goal is simple: to build awareness about this great community and to help make alcohol-free fun, easy, and tasting great. So here we go. Enjoy. Hey there, this is Chris, and I am excited about the upcoming episode that you're about to hear. I got a chance to meet Laura Willoughby in London not too long ago and was immediately asking her to come on the podcast. And since then, she's been doing some really interesting things, and I don't want to get into it too much. We'll talk about it on the episode. So hope you enjoyed Laura Willoughby from Club Soda. Hey there, and welcome to Alcohol Free Radio. I'm excited to introduce this week's guest, Laura Willoughby. Laura is the founder of Club Soda, and we got a chance to meet in London not too long ago. We, I think, had known each other and emails had been passing in the night, this and that, but we got to spend some time. There's a lot of cool events going on. It's definitely a hotbed of innovation in the space, and that's thanks in no small part to Laura. So welcome.
Excellent. I feel like we've been flirting for ages and now we're here.
Yes, it's happening. So I want to really, I told you before we were just getting set up that let's not talk too much, because I wanted to, to dive right in, but let's get it as part of the podcast. So really kind of go back to the beginning, like, your entrepreneurial instincts that got you to get to Club Soda and some of its iterations. And then we'll go from there.
Yeah, the word entrepreneur, I always feel really uncomfortable with, not only because I can't spell it. I'm not sure if you're like me. I get it wrong every time.
Yes, every time. Yeah.
But also, I don't really feel like an entrepreneur. It's worth knowing for everybody that I've got a social change background. I've been a community campaigner since I was 14. Right. I got elected to local government when I was 23. I've done lots of campaigning around equalities. And before, the job I had before Club Soda was I was running a bank switching campaign to get people to switch to more ethical banking as a result of the banking crisis in 2008.
Right.
So you'll see that my route into everything I do is about how we might change the world. And when I came out of that job on bank switching, I left it in order to join a business program to look at how people may create businesses that can change the world, basically. Right. And so I went on that program with the idea around creating Club Soda. And that in itself came from the fact that I gave up drinking 10 years ago, so back in 2012. Yeah. And in 2014, I went on this program and thought there has to be something better than the current drug and alcohol services that are available through the NHS in the UK, and something that has to be different to AA, and most importantly, something that's ethical. For some people who may have heard my story before, I actually gave up by going on a one-day course that is often from a very popular author. And I went away angry because there were people in the room who were dependent drinkers, and they were told to go away and not drink again with no safety information, no community, no support afterwards. And I felt outraged. So anger's a great motivator for me. I think I gave up drinking because I got angry on a one-day course about thinking that people had paid good money for this, and what they were given was something that was actually got no evidence base and was also unethical. Yeah. So I'd already mooted around the fact that, well, why is it you can go into and buy a magazine that talks about going on a diet, but you can't go in and pick up a magazine that helps you change your drinking? Why do you have things like Weight Watchers and Slimming World, but why don't you have something similar for changing drinking? And that's where the idea from Club Soda came from. And then I went on a program that taught me how to think about that in business terms. And that's where it all started, really. And so ultimately, Club Soda was about a community of change, that the more we bring people together so that we can learn from each other and recognise that we get pissed together, so why should we get sober alone? In the UK term of drunk. Then there's something here. Now, of course, where we've ended up is slightly different to that, which is really interesting. But that's where it started. And so It came from my experience, it came from a gap that I thought existed. And then the way we've developed, though, it has been more based on who I am as a campaigner rather than who I am as an entrepreneur.
Yeah. And so picking up from there, so that's the impetus, the kind of motivation, using anger, which I can identify with to drive kind of your plans and outcomes. What and seeing what was happening in society, like it is different in the US and the UK, but you know, the glorification of alcohol and how it basically infiltrated to the point where it's almost hard to socialize, or it's been hard. I think things that you're doing are making it easier, but been hard to socialize unless you basically give in to the zeitgeist of what that means, and how big alcohol has kind of driven that. So you've got the idea, you're building it out, you've got your kind of community activation or activism element, your experience in politics, your understanding um, of sobriety. How does that come together with some of the stages in, you know, I'll say Club Soda, but even more than that since then?
I love the fact that you think there are stages rather than the fact that I'm easily distracted and I like you think shiny things all the time. But yes, today, Chris, we're going to call them stages.
Yes, evolution.
Well, what happened is I had already known that pubs and bars had really awful options. And then our members started to talk in the community about the fact that it's all right telling people to drink less when they go out. But if
Yeah.
there's no good options, then what people do is default to an alcoholic drink. So we got a little bit of funding in 2015 from Hackney Council, and we did a project which you can still see online now called nudgingpubs.uk. And we
Okay.
took the behaviour change science we knew about individuals, and we said, okay, what can we work out what behaviour change techniques would help pubs and bars serve their non-drinking customers better? And what we learned is through doing that research, and we talked to hundreds of pubs in Dalston, we
Right.
did meetings, we did lots of experiments, which are basically what you would call glorified pub crawls, because we were around every pub and looked at what they had. And what we identified is that there was a lack of product for people to put behind the bar anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And then the staff didn't really care about it and they weren't trained about it. A really good example is there's a beautiful soda company here in the UK called Square Root Soda, and a
Okay.
few real ale houses had that in behind their bar. But it's got a 6 month shelf life because it's got less sugar in than anywhere else. So, you know, it doesn't last
Right.
forever. You know, it won't be there in the event of
You
a
got to move
retail
it. Yeah.
explosion, it won't still exist. And they said, oh, well, the problem is we don't sell very much of it. And I think you've got a beautiful, locally made craft soda. And if you think you can't sell a case of that out of 24 in 6 months, there must be something wrong with the way that you're trained. But we
Yeah.
also realised that there were issues with the fact that wholesalers are a big part of the gatekeepers to what gets onto shelves and so on. So we produced this massive report called Nudging Pubs that said, look, if we're going to change the way that venues serve their non-drinking customers, we're going to have to train staff, we're going to have to speak to wholesalers, we're going to have to talk about the economic bottom line, that there is a
Mm-hmm.
benefit, an economic benefit to selling low and no. And also we have to find a way to try and nudge venues into that. And so what happened is from that piece of research, we realised that peer and customer recognition were two really important things for venues. They want to know they're
Mm-hmm.
doing better than, or at least as good as, the pub next to them. They want to have great reviews on Google and so on. So we actually created our first pub guide in 2017, and we did a guide to Shoreditch and Hackney, City of London, Shoreditch and Hackney,
Yep. Yep.
which is probably the biggest concentration of pubs in the whole of the UK. We
Right.
visited 400 pubs face to face,
Wow.
and we built a scoring system that gave weighting depending on what types of drinks that you got behind the bar. And we launched that in January 2017, and we did it quite a lot of media. We did mindful pub crawls all around London. People could apply for pub crawl packs. So in January, when people normally stay at home, we would encourage them to invite their mates out to do a pub crawl. And we called it a guide for mindful drinkers because I wanted to call it a guide for healthier drinkers. But because in Club Soda we talk about low as well as no, we couldn't use the word healthy because there is
Yeah.
some alcohol there on our website. And so we've done a number of iterations of that guide, and it went nationwide, and it had venues were able to put themselves up. It created a score for them. They were able to tag in the products that they had. But we realised in 2017 that in January 2017, Heineken Zero came on the market. Big Drop came for the first time. And we
Right.
thought, you know what, why not bring everything that we do know into one thing? And so we did our first ever Mindful Drinking Festival, which was in Bermondsey Square in 2017. So you'll see that, as I say, we seem to follow our nose in club soda.
Yeah.
And so we carried on developing the guide and doing festivals, as well as building really good courses to help people change their drinking. And we got funding from, the international health charity, the Wellcome Trust, to do that.
Right.
And we started to have a research base and to talk to the hospitality sector about, why they might want to stock low and no. And so we began to speak more directly to that sector. So, it's a load of things that have happened all, gradually. But as people realised that we weren't telling people to avoid the pub and we weren't saying don't drink anything, we're saying how about you think about what you're drinking. We began to, have a voice that I didn't even think we would have at the beginning. The fact that, we would turn up to Imbibe, which is the UK's biggest, trade show, and talk about
Yes.
low and no is absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
And so we just kept plugging onwards with festivals, with influence, with talking to venues, with, working with the brands, and,
Right.
picking up some of the parliamentary stuff that needed doing, because I noticed that needed doing, although, now the space is shifting. Hopefully other people can do that, because I really hate spending time in Parliament.
Even though you're good at it. So, I mean, it's funny because the Imbibe conference, that was when we met in person at a pub right after with non-alcoholic options. I love the fact that, you've started with an understanding of some of the challenges, whether it's people's attitudes towards drinking through to the distribution and the selling of non-alcoholic and the education requirements in the wait staff or what have you, so that the actual products themselves are a piece of the puzzle. Obviously, we can't do much of this without that, but it was really, part of a much more kind of ongoing continuum. And, to your point about the pubs, you were your thoughts are pretty prescient because, that there was a CAM report out this week that's been getting coverage that 25% of the folks that are in pubs aren't drinking. So, it speaks to a lot of the work that you're doing in terms of the power of the impact it could have, given the number of people that are in these locations that don't drink. And I'm contrasting that to the U.S., or maybe elsewhere, or maybe just what you're doing relative to others in the space, which is much more about, basically selling product. You've got a much deeper kind of process and kind of effort going on. And I think in the long run, a lot of those things and you're seeing some of that in terms of education. We definitely see that in terms of, more content around what's happening here, sober curiosity, mindful drinking. So going from the phases and the stages, or the gradual process, I know you've done some pop-ups and you've got some plans for retail. Can you talk a bit about that?
So it's really interesting when you're a business that trades on ideas, that you want to talk to people about things and find ways to influence. It's actually really hard to monetize.
Mm-hmm.
And, we've been really lucky to have got support from all sorts of people over the years, including all the brands, to make that happen. But I didn't want to make a drink. I'm not very good at that sort of thing. I think it involves a lot more concentration than I have.
Yeah.
And I also didn't really want to do retail. I didn't want to, actually, if I thought about it, setting up an online store when Low and No first came in, we should have done that, right?
Yeah.
But we didn't, because it didn't occur to me that that'd be something I want to do. What the festivals are, and have always been for me, is not a business, but a piece of the behavioural change puzzle, which says that the taste of alcohol-free drinks has got better. There are drinks that you will like. They taste great. Why not come along for free, try some drinks, and discover something that you can add into your diet? So that's why the festivals have always been as they are, which is free to enter, really great ways for the brands to talk directly to the consumer. This January, rather than doing a 2-day festival at the Truman Brewery, which is where we normally do it,
Yeah.
we decided to do a pop-up shop instead, for 2 reasons really. One was I thought COVID might stop big events, and the second is that we don't have a shop here yet in the UK for various reasons around why retail is difficult here. but we didn't have a shop. And I felt the news agenda has done our festival a number of times, but would jump at the shop in a different way, particularly if you called it an alcohol-free off license, right? Because they've all been getting very excited about the meat-free butchers that have opened up, and the dairy-free cheese shops and all of that sort of stuff. So it's quite on vogue at the minute. So this year we created the shop, and we extended it from being open for 6 weeks to being open for 13, 14 weeks. But the important thing about that shop, always, because this is where the behaviour change comes in, all 120 brands in that shop are available to sample. And we were in charge of that sampling, right?
Yeah.
So I did a lot of the sampling. And that changed everything for me, you know. It made me realise that, yes, brand sampling to the consumer is really important, but what the consumer wants is to be navigated around this massive range of drinks, understand, you know, their tastes, and be given something that is delicious that they can go away with. And that can vary depending on your age and all sorts of other things. And that we had a lot of trade come in who were really excited to be able to play around with the products and not have a hard sell from the brands about why you should stock A and not B. So I suddenly realised that it is possible that we could create spaces that, of course, would sell the product at the end of the day, but that did more than that, that would create a focus for people to come and really engage with change and their ability to change their drinking or change what they have on their bar menu or all of those sorts of things. So I think we're now looking at how we might, you know, go UK-wide with a mindful drinking offer that would also include some low as well as no alcohol. I've never ever been keen on alcohol-free only spaces, right? You know, I've always wanted pubs to have something for everybody. And so in theory, that's what we're doing. We're creating a mostly alcohol-free space, but it has a particular resonance at this point in time.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, I think it matches just how humans socialize. Yes, of course, some people who don't drink all socialize together, but back to that earlier point, if 25% of the folks or people in a pub are not drinking, they're socializing with others that are drinking. And, you know, I think of the early days of, you know, vegetarianism, at least when it became more normalized, like I'm dating myself, but back in the 80s, you know, I had my one vegetarian friend, and, you know, if we wanted to go out to dinner, we had to go to the one vegetarian restaurant. And that's just not the case now. It's completely integrated. And because I don't socialize only with meat eaters.
No, absolutely. And you want social and convivial spaces. At the end of the day, you know, when I was younger, drinking was about standing in a pub with a pint. Now going out is mixed gendered. It is about food. It's about experience. It's about more than the drink. And therefore, why would you want to go to somewhere separate that that didn't have other things? Nearly everybody I know who doesn't drink doesn't mind if other people drink. So it's not that there needs to be an alcohol-free only space. I'm very keen, for example, that we have more of a cafe culture in the UK that opens in the early evening. So actually lots of people, including young people, who would rather go and you see it here because Starbucks does open late, for example, that there's somewhere that you can go and socialise that is more of a cafe, and there's somewhere you can go and socialise that's more of a bar, and there's somewhere that you can go and socialise that's an escape room, and there's somewhere you can socialise that's a restaurant. And, you know, it doesn't have to be an alcohol-free only space, but it's likely the cafe will be alcohol-free only, and some of the bars might have half and half. There's a few bars here that do that in the UK. So it's about spaces and occasions and about how you make everybody feel welcome. Another great example is, of course, you know, we've got Pride here in the UK, and Pride ends up being very boozy. But Pride primarily is a march and a social occasion. So how do we make Pride not alcohol-free, but make sure that it serves everybody?
Right.
And then in doing that, that means everywhere has more choice. And it means that if anyone doesn't want to drink today, they've got choice. And also they're more likely to pick an alcohol-free choice. And so everybody's drinking improves as a result, as opposed to if you're not drinking, you have to go there. And if you are drinking, you have to go there.
Yeah.
And I suspect that's
a better experience for everyone.
Yeah. And I know in the States it's probably a bit more like that when we speak to, you know, most of our visitors to Club Soda are now actually American. And what we find is they go, well, a bar's for drinking. whereas the pub's a bit different here.
Yeah,
But they
it's
go to
more.
bars
It's
for
much more
drinking.
of a
If you don't want to drink,
social institution, I think, in
yeah,
London or in the UK, whereas in the US, yeah, bar's a bar, and it has a
yeah.
purpose.
Yeah. So, but you've got all sorts of other spaces that, we've always been very jealous of here in the UK.
Uh-huh.
So, yeah, so it's a really interesting shift, and I'm really interested in how you take all of those potential levers of change and you help them change quicker than they would have done, so that we can move all of this harder and faster, so everybody can make better choices about how much they drink and what they drink and when.
Yeah. Tell me a bit about, so, we've talked about the various venues and some of your earlier work around the pub, the 400 pubs. And the general, I'm sure it's evolving, or imagine it's a range of feedback, but pub owners, wait staff, people in other venues like cafes and things like that. Can you give a bit of a snapshot of the various perspectives or responses you've gotten in terms of, as this is becoming more of a, the proliferation of products, or people are hearing about it in different ways? What's a couple kind of samples of the type of feedback you've gotten, good and bad?
I mean, it is amazing how much this has shifted over the years. So, when we first went to speak to pubs, there were clearly some venues that were aimed at younger people were getting it, and they were
Right.
beginning to be offered products. So they began, at the end of the day, Heineken doesn't make a 0.0 beer unless they think there's a market for it, right? So they definitely listen to that perspective. But it was still very back in 2017. People going, well, I don't know. Most people come here to drink and so on.
Mm-hmm.
Now it's got so much softer. Everyone understands that no one knows a thing. When you do talks at trade shows, when the buyer from Sainsbury's talks about the fact that the trend for next year is still low and no, then people begin to listen. But actually, what happened here in the UK is you've got some products come onto the market, and then suddenly the supermarkets here. Suddenly Tesco's put a big alcohol-free
Yeah.
section in their big stores, and everyone went, well, what's going on here?
Yeah.
I didn't know this was a thing. And then stats would come out saying younger people are drinking less, and middle-aged journalists would go, oh, apparently young people are no fun anymore. And I would go, no, actually it's cross-generational, because I'm an Ladette generation and we're cutting down as well. And they would go, oh, I don't understand this. And then slowly over the years it's got better, to the point that we took 16 brands to London Wine Fair this year. It's the first time alcohol-free's been a section there.
Yeah.
Obviously, wine's got a different process to go through to create a product, and so it's always been a bit, wine's a bit of a harder trick, basically, to pull off alcohol-free. But things are getting better, and there are things in the wine occasion space. But that stand was busy, and I know that 3-4 years ago, we would have been laughed out of the park, whereas this time people go, right, what is it that we have for our non-drinkers? And there's a guy called Freddie who runs a chain of wine bars in the UK called Vagabond Wines.
Okay.
And this is how sometimes I forget what I've been doing, because I would say 3 years ago I did a round table for the drinks business about alcohol-free. And one of the UK's biggest wine writers was on it, and she was like, no, this is all awful and terrible. Alcohol-free wine's terrible, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
And he sat on it and he went, well, no, we don't have anything alcohol-free. And I sat and said, well, this isn't about you. It's about your customer. And if you want young people or people who don't drink for religious reasons or people who are driving tomorrow to come through your door, then why wouldn't you give them something nice to drink? Because my money is as good as anyone else's money. You're just telling me that my behaviour is wrong and strange, rather than the fact that I'm just not drinking tonight. And I left that talk thinking, oh, that was one of the worst ones I've ever done, because, beer's been really easy and exciting in this space for years. And anyway, Freddie came up to me at the launch party for London Wine Fair and said, you gave me a bollocking 3 years ago. I didn't think I'd given him a bollocking, but, that's how he received it. And he said, and I listened.
You might have to translate that for our American listeners.
I ticked him off. I don't know. I told him off. I'm sure I didn't do that. But anyway, and he came to me and said, I listened to what you said. And I realised that me and my wine buyer were buying just for ourselves. We were buying for middle-aged white men. And we've changed what we stock. So thank you. And I was just taken aback. And
Yeah.
he's now one of our biggest
That's great.
advocates. And he's sat on
Yeah.
panels and he's talked about how he's changed his mind because of something I said to him 3 years ago. And so I just want to go and talk to everybody. That's basically it. And say, look, this is about equality. This is about choice. This is about upgrading people from a tap water to something that they pay for.
Yes.
And it's about creating spaces and occasions. It's not about the strength of the drink in the glass.
Yeah, that's great. And back to your point on Tesco, which is like a Walgreens or a CVS. That's where I think in North America, jealous of really, I think a higher maturity in terms of the adoption of alcohol-free products in the UK, Europe more generally, but I think UK for sure, having those alcohol-free dedicated spaces, that's not here yet. So seeing that, it's becoming more
Yeah.
normalized, and it's, the
But you're
specialty place.
American and you're a bigger market and you'll overtake us because you've got more diversity
I
to
think the
cater for
time
already.
sequence won't take as long. They're fast follow.
Yeah.
In the U.S. and Canada, there's some fast following going on because of how quickly, Dry January, for example, started in Scandinavia. UK really is where it flourished, and now it's happening here, but it's picking, it's getting more popular more quickly. So
Yeah.
it's kind of starting to become a bit more balanced, and it's exciting to see. So, okay, so I know that as I was leaving, you were busily getting ready for a big event that happened last weekend.
Yeah, so
What happened?
we had our 10th festival in Brighton last weekend, so it's our second one outside of London and our first, proper one since lockdown. We did do 2 online ones during lockdown, and it was great to be by the sea for 2 days. We had over 40 brands. We had about 5,000 people come over the weekend.
Hmm.
Brighton's a hard drinking town, but it's also full of
Yes.
lots of people who are interested in health. It's a really sort of duplicitous space in some ways. People go, oh, everyone just drinks here. I think a couple of people started their hen night parties at their bachelorette parties for
Yeah.
translation at our festival before going into town all dressed up.
Yeah.
So,
You probably saved a few evenings with that being the
well,
place to start.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure that's possible, but yeah, it was a great weekend, and it reminded me because sometimes you can be in your capital city bubble, and London is very good for low and no and for diversity and choice and thinking
Right.
about people. That going outside of London, there's still a long way to go, and there's a lot of education still needed in this space.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, so that's past, present, and future. So without giving away too much, what's in store for Club Soda and Laura Willoughby?
Well, I'm really interested still in how we get product into people's hands in a way that's
Hmm.
meaningful. I'm not sure if you're like me, but my mum does sampling in supermarkets. It's been part of
Oh,
her
cool.
job for a long time, and she's done a few alcohol-free brands. And sampling of alcohol in supermarkets normally goes very normally. You get this tiny thimbleful of gin, and basically someone persuades you to buy this thimbleful of gin brand rather than the brand they were going to buy. And
Okay.
that's fine with alcohol because basically you're buying the alcohol and someone's
Yeah.
just persuaded you to buy some alcohol with a slightly different taste and a slightly different label on it. Alcohol free, you still need to. There's a different story to tell. Like this is something you need to drink. You could drink
Yeah.
during the week, or if you're cutting
It's different.
down.
It's new.
Could you imagine drinking, this alcohol-free gin in a big glass with ice in at home in front of the TV? You're trying to talk to people about occasion, about
Yeah, it's not a
mood.
switch cell. It's a
It's not a simple switch between alcohol and alcohol-free. And so I'm very passionate about the fact that people need to try stuff
mhm.
in better context and they need to meet the brands and hear the story and taste the product there and then. Or somebody needs to take them through a journey around tasting and finding the right thing for them. Because,
Yeah.
I don't like all the alcohol-free gins, but there are some that I really love.
Yeah,
It
exactly.
doesn't mean that I don't like alcohol-free gin. It just means that you might not have found the one that you don't like yet. So that idea around sampling and trying and finding innovative ways for people to try is where we're
Mhm.
at. And I've got ideas around how we pull on the amazing community that's already passionate about alcohol-free and how we might create spaces like the pop-up shop that we did around the UK that may also give people the opportunity to come in and try. I'm not interested in like a traditional bottle shop. I want people to be able to sample everything. I want them to have staff that are incredibly knowledgeable. I want them to go away with a happy little skip because they found something they're going to really enjoy when all their mates are drinking alcohol. So that's where we're looking at the minute. It means that for the first time I'm going to have to look at getting investment and stuff like that, which we've not done before. We've been very much self-funded from, me selling everything I owned. But we will get there, which, is quite nice to finally work out what our formula might be after so many years of poking around, basically, and not really working out what our role might be.
Yeah, it definitely
this is why
sounds
I'm not
like
an entrepreneur, Chris. You'd have gone right in there, wouldn't you? You'd have gone bang, bang, bang.
No. A lot of the things you're talking about are basically the same here. We might use different words, but I think whether you want to call yourself an entrepreneur or not.
Different things motivate different people, and collaboration and change motivate me. So.
Yeah. Well, and collaboration and change is definitely a big part of what I believe in as well in terms of this space, which is why I'm so glad to have you on the show and let everyone hear your story and what you've been working on and what you're doing and the social change aspect of it, and the tasting and liquid. We often refer to that here, liquid on lips, and the bottle shops here are doing a good job of that. It's an important piece of that, and I think you're really helping to lead the way. So first of all, thank you for what you're doing. Thank you for being on the show. I'm excited to stay connected, and please let everyone know your handles. So if they've got some questions or follow-up, they at least know how to see what's happening as things unfold.
Yeah, and just because you're in the US doesn't mean that you can't follow Club Soda. I have to say that 2/3 of our web traffic is from the States because people read our reviews and our content.
Which is great.
So you can find us on joinclubsoda.com, and our social handles are @joinclubsoda.
Amazing. Laura Willoughby, Club Soda. Thank you so much for being a guest.
Thank you.
Okay, take care. See you later. Well, we hope you enjoyed this episode of Alcohol Free Radio. We'd love to hear from you. Send us a message on social media or through email at hello@betterroads.com. Great to be here with you all together. Take care.